Local programming on KRWG Public Media made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Fronteras, a Changing America. I'm Anthony Moreno. The New Mexico Local News Fund is dedicated to strengthening local news across the state to ensure residents are getting the information they need. Joining us now to share more about the work of the group and how the organization is making an effort in the southern part of the state is Diana Alba-Soular, Project Manager with the New Mexico Local News Fund. Diana, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for the opportunity to be here.
It's great to have you on the show. Can you share with us a little bit about the Local News Fund and why it was established?
It was established before the pandemic by our founder, Sarah Gustavus. She's a former journalist from here in New Mexico, and she really saw a need to create an organization that was looking to address some of the systemic structural issues, challenges that have persisted in local news across the state. There's been a decline in the number of journalists across New Mexico that has really gone hand in hand with challenges local news has faced nationwide. And so that means fewer journalists in communities, fewer journalists covering the stories that matter, challenges all the way around.
A story that many in our part of the state are so familiar with, and the News Fund has set up a collaboration here in the southern part of the state, the Southern New Mexico Journalism Collaborative, which you lead and oversee. Can you tell us about the work you're doing right now?
Certainly. So we formed the collaborative as a project of the News Fund to try to get the remaining local news organizations to partner, whether it's with story ideas, sources, sometimes covering the same topic to get more amplification of important issues. We've also done solutions reporting, which is reporting on not just the problems that exist with some of the challenges we face in our local area, but what are people doing, whether it's here or elsewhere, to try and address those challenges. And more recently, we've also just delved into some of the more in-depth, important issues that a lot of journalists just don't have time for due to not having a lot of time because there aren't very many journalists in newsrooms nowadays. And so, like one of the projects we did recently was we worked with Oregon Mountain News to do some reporting around the terrible dust storms that happen around Lordsburg, New Mexico on I-10, and more than 40 people have died over the last number of decades in dust storm related crashes there. And it had sort of flown under the radar. There was reporting on, this crash happened, this many people died, and it was due to dust storms, but looking at the bigger picture of why is this going on. So stuff like that really we're able to do that many newsrooms don't have resources for nowadays.
How do you approach newsrooms and try to work with them and communicate with them and form these collaborations? Well,
it's sort of ended up being a collaboration with whichever journalists are available, because as I mentioned, many journalists just have a lot of time constraints because they're trying to cover the city council, the county commission, what NMSU is doing, the latest police shooting, unfortunately, things like that. And so it's almost just trying to find who's available and interested in the topic, but it usually starts with an idea that's relevant to our area. For instance, one of the ideas I've been sort of thinking about a project for is around the measles outbreak and what that means for our community and our region.
Certainly something that's on a lot of people's minds in our area. One of the things that the collaborative was able to report on was COVID-19 recovery and how the region was doing during that. Can you share with us a little bit about what the collaborative was able to really bring to light with that reporting?
Yes, I think a couple highlights from our work during the COVID-19 pandemic were around the broadband challenges that exist around during the pandemic. So much of our lives went online, as I'm sure you're aware. doctor's offices, business appointments, just business meetings, school, education. Almost everybody was forced to go online during the pandemic, but rural New Mexico really doesn't have the infrastructure in place to have high-speed internet that allows for, easy streaming of Zoom meetings or participation in Zoom meetings, which is important for kids who are trying to, when they have to do education remotely. So we sort of spotlighted the depth of those challenges as well as some of the efforts to, improve conditions around broadband access. And let's see, another aspect was mental health, as well as last year we really went into a youth mental health reporting project in response to just the fact that there's a youth mental health crisis that is ongoing, and we wanted to take a look at, well, what is the nature of the challenges locally in our area and across southern New Mexico, and also what are some of the things that could possibly help with respect to those challenges.
Certainly an issue that people are paying attention to. KRWG Public Media has been part of the collaborative. You've been able to work with our team as well as we work on some of these reporting projects. What do you think are some of the biggest challenges in trying to support the newsrooms in the state, and your conversations with newsroom leaders? What are the big issues they're facing with?
Probably the biggest one that I see is simply really not having the staff to do what they would like to do in terms of what they're covering, geographic areas that they might be not covering because of just not having a reporter to go to that community and go to its school board meetings or its village trustee meetings, those kinds of things. And so I think that's pretty much across the board. Everybody's constrained for time. And when there's particularly big issues that happen, like say the fires in Ruidoso or the unfortunate mass shooting that happened at Young Park a few months ago, that really zaps a lot of the reporting resources as people try to sort out what's going on. It's almost like the crisis, reporting on the crisis that's ongoing. And so I'd say that's probably the biggest challenge. I think the willingness and the interest in cooperation is there, but just sometimes it's just a lot of times it's lack of staffing to do the reporting that they would like to do.
And that lack of staffing may be for a lot of different reasons, but a big one is funding and
Exactly.
having those resources available so that you can hire a team. We've certainly seen quite a bit of change in that area in the last decade, maybe even 15 years in our region. Can you share with us a little bit about when you look back at the media landscape and how it's changed in southern New Mexico? What are the big things that really stand out to you?
Well, probably one of the biggest things, and it takes different forms, but because of society's move from, listening to radio, people still do, it's just there's fewer people who do than in the past, watching TV for their news, subscribing to a print newspaper. It's all moved online for the most part in some form or fashion, and more recently social media in the last decade or so. And so whenever that began happening, it eroded a lot of the advertising base that used to pay for journalist salaries. And that erosion just sort of got worse. There were other things that came along, like the pandemic, that just accelerated that. Things like Google Ads and people maybe taking their advertising just directly to their clients through email, newsletters, through Facebook, that kind of thing. And so there's a lot of challenges, but it does come down to funding in many instances. Definitely with public media, I know you all have a different funding model that relies on listener, viewer contributions, and as well as federal funding, and that's been a concern of the New Mexico Local News Fund as of late, in that there's been attempts by the federal government to curtail that funding. And so there's sort of different layers to the challenge, but funding is a big part of it, because to pay a journalist fairly, you need a living wage.
And there's been a lot of challenges in local newsrooms across New Mexico, in our region, in southern New Mexico, of course. But the rural areas have been impacted by this issue. Can you share with us how rural communities have had to really navigate this change and seen newsrooms shrink considerably, if not go under?
Certainly. Well, I can think of, I had spoken with a former editor who had worked at the Ruidoso News like 20, I don't know, it's been some, maybe more than 20 years ago, and he was talking about, you know, they used to have, I don't know, on the order of, it was something like 15 or something journalists there. Now they're owned by a different company as of last year, but I think there's like, you know, one or so journalists working there with a regional editor. And so I'd have to double check the numbers on that, but I know it's many fewer than it used to be. Also in areas like Deming, for a while, there really wasn't a local news source that was operational. That's changed the last couple of years as an independent newspaper owner out of Silver City purchased the Deming Headlight, and sort of revived it to some degree. A lot of times in some of the rural communities, there's like a one-person newsroom, basically. So they're doing everything from selling ads to sometimes delivering the paper to the newsstands and picking it up from the printer and writing the content and wearing all hats. And so it's really an exercise of just almost like a labor of love for their communities.
With that news source being gone or shrunk in many communities in our part of New Mexico, where might folks tend to turn to get their information, and just how great of a source might that be? Do you have any concerns there?
Certainly. Well, I know it's basically people are turning to social media to fill those information gaps. Sometimes to the positive and many times to the negative, because as we all know, anybody can post anything on social media without it being really vetted or verified or fact-checked or anything like that. And so it's a mixed bag, and you sort of see it when there is a big news story. There can be rumors that spread like wildfire about what's actually going on, and you find out later on, oh, that wasn't true. And so I definitely saw that happen with respect to the Ruidoso fires, and also with respect to the mass shooting here in Las Cruces.
Yeah, you mentioned two major stories, and when the news broke, where are the reporters to be able to hop on this story to get the information we need?
Certainly. Yeah, I think that's a big challenge. I think it happened like on a Friday night, if I'm not mistaken, and when most journalists in the area are probably, you know, already gone home for the day. And so definitely it's sort of a scramble to get out to that scene. And I think in the past, like I used to work at the Las Cruces Sun News, that would have been no question for an editor to send one of the journalists who'd already gone home for the day out to cover that story. And now there's, I think, two general assignment journalists at the Las Cruces Sun News, and probably a bit more of a challenge when you've only got two staff.
And that staff might have just finished up a 12-hour day already.
Yes, they might have. They probably did, actually. So to wrap up weekend coverage and the day's coverage for sure. So
how does the local news fund be able to support these newsrooms through various ventures? Perhaps it's grants, perhaps it's just support. I mean, what are some of the things that you're able to help with newsrooms in our area so that they can continue to do the reporting that's so essential?
Well, one of the things that has been pretty significant is we've been able to bring in philanthropic support to some degree, so to offer different grant programs to local newsrooms across New Mexico. Another aspect is we have a fellowship program which allows, we're able to partner recent graduates of New Mexico universities who are interested in doing journalism with newsrooms who need a journalist, and it sort of helps both of them, because it helps that usually young journalists sort of get their foot in the door for an opportunity, learn some of the on-the-job skills that they might not quite have picked up in college, but they have the basis. They just need to develop those a little bit more. And then the newsroom gets a journalist for a year, and that salary is paid by support that the News Fund has helped, I guess, advocate for. And so that's probably another aspect. We also host a year-end matching campaign where newsrooms across New Mexico can host some sort of fundraising drive, whether it's like increase the amount of subscriptions they have, because every newsroom has its own funding model, donations, subscriptions, just contributions, and then that's matched up to a certain amount by News Fund revenue. And so there's sort of different programs that are going on that help support newsrooms, essentially financially, but I mean, like the fellowship it's more of contributing a person more so than the direct financial assistance, I guess.
And somebody that is from New Mexico, graduated from a program in the state, KRWG is taking part in this fellowship program over the next year. So seeing that, being able to help our team has certainly been something that I know a lot of folks are very excited about. I want to talk with you about community engagement. Certainly. And just how that's playing a role in your effort. Can you share with us about how you're engaging with communities in southern New Mexico?
Certainly. Well, we do work with a part-time community engagement coordinator. Her name is Lauren Schoonover, and she's been helping us sort of build bridges in communities that haven't had a lot of local news coverage. And one of the things that I think has been great that we've done so far is we held last fall a youth mental health and art workshop out in the communities, but in one of the communities that was Anthony, New Mexico, and that was in connection to our youth mental health reporting project. But when you sort of like go to conferences, things like that, engagement is becoming a bigger piece of the conversation. So it's not just reporting the story, it's like doing these extra events that really get in touch with the community, hear from the community, and also potentially shapes the reporting that we're doing by listening to their feedback and also what they want to see next, basically.
How important is that to really meet the audience in the community where they are?
I think it's a growing need for sure. I went to a conference last month, and they were discussing about how some of the erosion of trust in local news, which is a little bit of a complex issue there, but definitely people have lost trust in local news. And one of the things that does resonate with audiences is when they're able to meet a journalist who's doing the story one-on-one and just get to realize that they're a real person from the community and a reliable source of information for that community.
And being able to connect with communities can be a challenge for some newsrooms. Obviously, where we live in the borderland, there may be a language barrier that many newsrooms may be dealing with. Can you share a little bit about efforts to really bridge that gap?
Certainly. Well, I think that's one of Lauren's biggest strengths is that she's from southern New Mexico. She graduated from Gadsden High and has a lot of deep ties in the community, and she's bilingual and just knows a lot of people. And so we made an intentional effort to find somebody who was bilingual to fill that role. And also, we do have more work to do in that area for sure, but it's sort of a starting place, and she's definitely helped us make a lot of connections that wouldn't be possible without her work.
How do events like this and community engagement work, and hopefully getting amazing local journalism out of those efforts, how can all of that transform a community?
I think ultimately the stronger relationship with the community can help empower audiences, and by paying attention to the issues that they say are important for their community, it gives them information that they're looking for to make better decisions about their lives, or even know what's going on at their local government to potentially provide input or some sort of action in support of what they want in their community. And so it is sort of a symbiotic relationship where local news and its impact is just increased when there's stories being done that actually matter to the people in the communities that are being reported on. And I think having those, like you mentioned earlier, journalists who are coming from those communities, it helps a great deal to have that trust, that connection, understanding, and sometimes the bilingual aspect is very important in our area. And so all of those are just very important for sure.
So where do partnerships with community groups or organizations play a role in this effort to strengthen local news?
Yeah, definitely. I want to give a shout out to the community partners that we worked with. We were able to get the space in Anthony to host that youth mental health art workshop. And thanks to Borderland Family Ties, who does a lot of work in that community. And it was just a space to, host the dozen people who showed up and participate in this workshop. But I mean, it's community connections like that that are invaluable. And sometimes it's just information about what's going on in the communities that we don't have enough journalists to really know everything, but there's issues going on that are sort of flying under the radar, but a community group that's got its personnel out there and staffers out there, they hear a lot about what's going on. So like Community Empowerment Congress, they attend our collaborative meetings and have been great partners in that regard. So
getting that helpful information from folks who are living in the community and working in different areas on the ground, you see that as possibly a potential future model for what local news could be?
I think it's probably increasingly going to be important because the reality is there are just fewer journalists now, and hopefully that will change in the future for the positive. I just don't know how quickly that's going to happen. But I'll give an example. I didn't mention this earlier, but food insecurity reporting, issues of hunger, particularly in the rural areas, the outlying areas around Las Cruces, even southern New Mexico. I think it's a broader issue, but definitely we had heard that Sunland Park might be struggling even more so than some of the other communities with a higher rate of food insecurity. And so we had touched base with Community Empowerment Congress, which has one of its staff people there, and we're able to get to the root of what was going on with basically there was a huge demand for food assistance, and the food assistance was only meeting a very small portion of that demand. And we sort of shined a spotlight on that issue, and they have gotten more food that's being supplied to assist residents there since our reporting. I don't know if we can say that we're exclusively responsible for that, but I think it didn't hurt, that more people know that this is a struggle and a challenge. But I think it helped to get the baseline of what we should even be looking at by talking to, say, one of their staffers there in the community who's really in touch with the challenges that people are facing there and the needs.
I only have a couple minutes with you, but I want to know what the future of local news looks like in our region. I'd kind of like to give you a chance to share your thoughts on that. Let's start off with some of the big challenges you're concerned about.
Well, I am very concerned about just the numbers of journalists shrinking over time. There's also been an erosion, like I mentioned, erosion of trust in local news. The younger audiences tend to not want to pay anything out of pocket for local news for a lot of reasons. I can understand why, but I mean, on social media, you get your content for free for the most part, and so that's a model that they expect So I think that's going to be a challenge. Maybe people under, 50, under the age of 45, probably. So that's going to create, further challenges for how to fund journalism, trusted journalism. I think that there's more challenges on the federal level now that there's like these cuts that are being proposed for public media, and I think public media really those stations serve as a backbone, an anchor of sorts to the rural areas, because you all have infrastructure out there that nobody else really has. And I'll just harken back to something that your station manager had said the other day about how Lordsburg used to have commercial TV in its community. Now public media is the only represented TV station there.
One last question. I only have about 20 seconds, but where could local news be? What are the opportunities?
Well, I think ideally there would be community support that helps and takes many forms. Contributing to public media, subscribing to your local newspaper, or donations if it's a nonprofit model helps, I think. Just being connected, interested, commenting on stories. Did it make a difference in your life? Connecting with a journalist, showing up to a KRWG event when you're out and about in the community. All of these are ways people can support local news.
All right, Diana Alba-Soular with the New Mexico Local News Fund, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us for this week's episode. A note, this is my final time hosting this program before I depart KRWG Public Media for new opportunities. You may still see me in pre-recorded interviews. I want to thank you so much for watching this program and supporting it. It's been an honor to share your stories and help elevate the conversations around issues that impact us all. Also, a special thanks to our production crew. That includes students from NMSU. It's been wonderful to be part of a team dedicated to KRWG Public Media's mission for nearly 13 years. Goodbye, and thank you for joining us on Fronteras, A Changing America. I'm Anthony Moreno.